Have you ever wondered what events sparked the largest global conflict in history? Let's rewind to the aftermath of the First World War. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in June of 1919, ended the war between Germany and the Allied powers. But this wasn't a treaty of peace, rather a treaty of vengeance. It imposed heavy reparations on Germany, stripped it of its territories, and reduced its military might. This left the German nation humiliated and economically crippled. In the throes of this hardship, a charismatic speaker emerged, promising to restore Germany's honor and glory. His name was Adolf Hitler, and he would become the leader of the National Socialist German Workers' Party, better known as the Nazi Party. Hitler's rise to power was meteoric, bolstered by his promise of a strong, united Germany, free of the shackles imposed by the Treaty of Versailles. But Europe wasn't the only continent stirring. Across the globe in Asia, Japan was flexing its military muscles, invading Manchuria in 1931. Italy, under the leadership of Benito Mussolini, was also harboring imperialistic ambitions, invading Ethiopia in 1935. The world watched as these aggressive acts unfolded yet did little to intervene. This was the policy of appeasement, a diplomatic approach that hoped to avoid war by making concessions to the aggressor. However, this policy only emboldened the likes of Hitler, Mussolini, and Japan's militaristic government. The Treaty of Versailles, Hitler's rise to power, the aggression of Japan and Italy, and the failure of appeasement, all combined to create a volatile cocktail. A cocktail that was about to explode into the most devastating conflict the world had ever seen. And thus, the fuse was lit for a conflict that would engulf the world. September 1st, 1939, a date that would change the world forever. On this fateful day, Germany, under the command of Adolf Hitler, invaded Poland, marking the onset of the Second World War. This act of aggression was not a mere territorial dispute, but rather the debut of a new form of warfare that would come to be known as Blitzkrieg, or Lightning War. Blitzkrieg was a military strategy, the likes of which the world had never seen before. It emphasized speed and firepower, with the aim of disorienting the enemy and striking deep into their territory before they could effectively respond. It was a strategy that was as terrifying as it was effective. The German forces, utilizing their panzer divisions and air support, made swift progress. Polish defenses, though valiant, were overwhelmed by the sheer speed and force of the German offensive. Cities fell, one after another, and within a month, Poland was forced to surrender. The Blitzkrieg was not just a military tactic, it was a psychological weapon. It instilled fear and panic, breaking the morale of the forces that stood against it. And with Poland's fall, the world got a chilling preview of the devastation that this new form of warfare could cause. Poland's fall marked the beginning of a horrific era. As the world watched in disbelief, a coalition began to form. The dark cloud of war was spreading fast, and it was clear that the only way to combat this looming threat was unity. A band of nations, initially including Britain, France, and China, came together, forging an alliance that would become known as the Allies. Their alliance was not just a political statement, but a declaration of shared values and a commitment to peace. Despite their cultural and geographical diversity, these nations were bound together by a common purpose: to resist the expansion of totalitarian regimes. As the conflict escalated, the Soviet Union, initially in a pact with Germany, found itself at the receiving end of Hitler's aggression. The Eastern Front was opened, and the USSR joined the Allies, adding to the strength of the coalition. Across the Atlantic, the United States watched with growing concern. The attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941 was the final straw. The United States declared war on Japan and by extension on the Axis powers. The Allies' ranks swelled, bolstered by the industrial might and manpower of the United States. Yet the path to victory was not smooth. The Allies faced significant setbacks, losing territories and suffering heavy casualties. But these initial losses only strengthened their resolve. They learned from their mistakes, adjusted their strategies, and persevered. United in purpose, the Allies were ready to push back. They were prepared to pay the price for freedom, for a world free from tyranny and oppression. 1942, a pivotal year in the war. The world held its breath as two major battles unfolded, marking a seismic shift in the course of World War II. Firstly, let's traverse to the Pacific. There, in the vast expanse of blue, the tiny atoll of Midway became the stage for a dramatic showdown. The Battle of Midway, a clash between the United States and the Japanese Empire, was a daring gamble, a high-stakes game of naval strategy. The Japanese sought a decisive victory, aiming to eliminate the United States as a strategic power in the Pacific. But fortune favored the brave. The American forces, with a combination of skill, courage, and a dash of luck, dealt a crushing blow to the Japanese fleet, sinking 4 of their aircraft carriers. This victory marked a significant turning point, halting Japanese expansion and giving the United States the upper hand in the Pacific theater. Meanwhile, half a world away, the bitter Russian winter was the backdrop for another monumental battle. The city of Stalingrad was under siege. The German army, under the command of Adolf Hitler, was determined to capture this industrial hub on the banks of the Volga River. The Soviet Union, however, had different plans. In a brutal war of attrition, the Red Army defended their city with a tenacity that was as fierce as the winter chill. The Battle of Stalingrad was a grim testament to human resilience, a battle fought not just with guns and tanks, but with willpower and determination. When the smoke cleared, the German forces were in retreat, marking the first major defeat for Hitler's armies and a significant turning point on the Eastern Front. These 2 battles, fought thousands of miles apart, had a profound impact. They marked the beginning of the end for the Axis powers, shifting the momentum towards the Allies. The tide of war had begun to turn. In 1944, the Allies made a daring move that would alter the course of the war. The operation was codenamed Overlord, but it's now widely known as D-Day. This grand invasion was the largest amphibious assault in history, involving over 150,000 troops from the United States, Britain, and Canada. Their destination? The fortified beaches of Normandy, France. The objective? To establish a Western front against the Axis powers, marking the beginning of the end for Hitler's Third Reich. The road to victory, however, would not be easy. The German defenses were robust, the weather unpredictable, and the cost of lives immense. Despite the challenges, the Allies persevered. By day's end, they had secured a toehold in Normandy. Over the next few weeks, they pushed further inland, liberating town after town from Nazi control. Paris, the City of Lights, was set free in August, less than 3 months after D-Day. France was once again in the hands of the French, and the Allies had a solid foothold in Europe. But the war was not over yet. The Allies pressed on towards the heart of Nazi Germany. By early 1945, they had crossed the Rhine, and by April they were at the gates of Berlin. Meanwhile, the Soviets were advancing from the east. Berlin was surrounded. The city, once the heart of Hitler's empire, was now a battleground. The fight was fierce, the destruction vast. But by May 2nd, the Soviets had taken control of Berlin. Hitler was dead, and Germany was on the brink of unconditional surrender. And so it was that on May 7, 1945, Germany officially surrendered to the Allies. The war in Europe was over. The Third Reich, once a formidable force that had swept across Europe, was defeated. The Allies had won, but at a great cost. The world would never be the same again. The Third Reich, once formidable, had crumbled. The fall of Berlin marked the end of an era, but it also marked the beginning of a new one, a time of rebuilding and reflection. It was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, even in the face of unimaginable adversity. Meanwhile, in the Pacific, the war was reaching its climax. As we've journeyed through the tumultuous waters of World War II, we've seen Europe engulfed in conflict and chaos. But now, let's set our compass due east and navigate the Pacific's stormy seas, where a different kind of war was unfolding. A strategy had emerged amongst the Allies known as island hopping. It was a methodical, deliberate approach, aimed at gaining control of strategic islands throughout the Pacific, one by one. This strategy was not just to gain territory but to cut off Japanese supply lines, slowly choking their war machine into submission. One of the most critical and brutal battles in this campaign was the Battle of Iwo Jima. This tiny volcanic island, just 8 square miles in size, became the stage for one of the fiercest and bloodiest battles of the war. The United States and its allies fought relentlessly against a deeply entrenched Japanese defense. The battle raged for over a month, with casualties on both sides reaching into the tens of thousands. The raising of the American flag atop Mount Suribachi, however, marked a significant turning point in this Pacific theater. Yet, the war was far from over. The final devastating act was yet to come. The United States, having developed a weapon of unimaginable power, made the decision to use it. In August of 1945, 2 atomic bombs were dropped on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The destruction was unprecedented, the loss of life staggering. These bombings marked a grim milestone in human history, the first and only time nuclear weapons have been used in warfare. In the wake of this cataclysmic event, Japan surrendered, and World War II came to an end. The battles had been brutal, the losses immense, but the relentless march of the Allies had finally brought the conflict to its conclusion. The Pacific Theater, too, had seen its final act. World War II left a world changed forever. Its impact was far-reaching, altering the course of history and shaping the world we know today. The aftermath of the war was a time of immense change. Countries lay in ruins, economies were shattered, and millions of people were displaced. Yet, amidst the rubble, the seeds of a new world order were being sown. One of the most significant developments during this period was the establishment of the United Nations. Born out of the ashes of the League of Nations, the UN was founded with a renewed commitment to prevent the scourge of war. It was a beacon of hope, a symbol of unity, and a promise to future generations that the horrors of World War II would never be repeated. Parallel to this, the Nuremberg trials marked a critical moment in international law. For the first time in history, individuals were held accountable for war crimes on an international stage. It was a monumental step towards justice, setting a precedent for future trials and reinforcing the notion that no one, regardless of their position or power, is above the law. Yet while the world was striving for peace and justice, the seeds of a new conflict were being sown. The ideological differences between the two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, gave birth to the Cold War. It was a conflict not fought on battlefields, but in the minds and hearts of people. A war of ideologies that would shape global politics for decades to come. World War II was not just a war, it was a turning point in human history. Its legacy is still evident today in our political systems, our laws, and our collective consciousness. It has taught us the true cost of war and the importance of unity, justice, and peace. World War II, a testament to the resilience of humanity, remains a poignant reminder of the devastating effects of war. So, let us recap the 10 key facts we have learned today. First, we delve into the causes of World War II. It was a complex web of economic strife, political unrest, and a global power struggle, all underpinned by the harsh terms of the Treaty of Versailles that ended World War I. Second, we discussed the Blitzkrieg or lightning war strategy, a swift and deadly attack method employed by the Germans that shocked the world and reshaped modern warfare. Third, we learned about the formation of the Allies, a coalition of countries including the United States, the United Kingdom, and the Soviet Union, who united to counter the Axis powers. Fourth, the Battle of Stalingrad marked a significant turning point in the war. It was one of the deadliest battles in history and signified the beginning of the end for the Axis powers. Fifth, we explored the significance of D-Day, the largest amphibious invasion in history. This crucial operation led by the Allies marked the beginning of the end for Hitler's Third Reich. Sixth, we examined the Pacific Theater, where the United States and its allies took on Japan. The brutal battles of Iwo Jima and Okinawa were key in turning the tide in the Allies' favor. Seventh, we touched on the horrifying reality of the Holocaust, the genocide of 6 million Jews under the Nazi regime, a dark chapter in human history we must never forget. Eighth, we discussed the use of atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the only time nuclear weapons have been used in warfare, leading to Japan's surrender. Ninth, we learned about the establishment of the United Nations in the aftermath of the war, a global organization aimed at maintaining international peace and security. And 10th, we talked about the division of Germany and the beginning of the Cold War, setting the stage for political and military tension between the world's superpowers for decades. And so, we remember World War II, not to glorify war, but to understand it, and hopefully to prevent its recurrence.